Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to our 619 course debate. We're going to be discussing the issue of using punishment in applied behavioral analysis. So the common understanding of punishment tends to have a negative light, mostly associated with like adversive situations like getting hit or spanked, yelled at, getting arrested, or getting some just taken away or just being restricted in some sense. In ABA, this is not the case. The term punishment in ABA simply means the process in which a particular behavior in question decreases because a stimulus was added or subtracted after that behavior occurred. A lot of the time, families receiving ABA services have to be taught the difference between the definition of punishment that they use and understand every day and the technical term used in ABA. So punishment in ABA means that the behavior has decreased as a result of adding or removing some sort of stimulus after the behavior. So the addition of or the removal of this stimulus will also make the behavior decrease in the future. Positive punishment is when a stimulus is added. Negative punishment is when a stimulus is taken away. So for example, a student is easily embarrassed and the teacher praises him in front of the entire class for answering a question. The amount of time he answers the question has decreased. This is an example of positive punishment because the teacher added the praise, the added stimulus, and that caused the student's behavior of answering questions to decrease because of that added stimulus. Negative punishment is when the stimulus is taken away and behavior decreases. So for example, Johnny hits his sister when she wanted to play on the computer with him. His mom took away the computer from Johnny. This resulted in Johnny no longer hitting his sister. So the computer being taken away and that stimulus being removed resulted in a decrease of hitting his sister. So reinforcement in ABA means that there's an increase in the future behavior. So this is the opposite of punishment. And that increase is usually due to the addition of a stimulus or the removal of one. Typically, the removal of one is an aversive one. So for example, the student answers a question, the teacher praises him. He now answers more questions in class. So the students answering question behavior increases because of the added teacher praise. This is a perfect example of positive punishment since the stimulus was added. An example of positive reinforcement. An example of negative reinforcement would be if the student did not like answering questions, so he threw his chair at the teacher. The teacher sends him to the principal's office, resulting in the student no longer having to answer the question. Now the student's chair throwing behavior has increased. So that was a basic overview of reinforcement and punishment in applied behavior analysis. The issue at hand is that punishment-based interventions have a history of being controversial, and when used, especially when used to treat behavioral problems. Even today, practitioners continue to debate the use of punishment in treatment due to the concerns of efficacy and ethics. So in this debate, we will have the opportunity to discuss both sides, the use and non-use of punishment in ABA in regards to efficacy and ethics. We have a couple of other members in this group, and I will be announcing their names and their roles. Mariah and Rayanne will be arguing against the use of punishment in ABA. Mariah will be the stater and the prover, while Rayanne will be the attacker. Along with those roles, Mariah will also be stating the rules and format of this debate, presenting any questions submitted by the audience, and Rayanne was in charge of inviting everyone to the debate and recording the debate. Austin and I will be arguing for the use of punishment in ABA, myself being the stater and prover, and Austin will be the attacker. In addition to that role, Austin will be keeping track of time and signaling the other debaters. Now I will hand it over to Mariah, who will go over the format and rules of this debate.
So the format of this debate is formal, in which both sides, both those in support of the use of punishment in ABA and those against the use of punishment in ABA, will state, prove, and counterattack the points addressed by the opposing view. Each side will be given time to discuss their argument and summarize before a final conclusion is drawn upon.
This debate will involve the arguments and supporting points of the use of non-use of punishment in ABA. Punishment has long been used in ABA therapy, but not without attempting a reinforcement-based intervention first. The use of intense aversive punishment procedures have ethical issues resolved through the BACB Code of Ethics. This debate will discuss the role of punishment in ABA therapy. Stephanie, the stater for the use of punishment in ABA, will begin by stating her points for the argument.
So I will state the points for the use of punishment in ABA. So punishment is a naturally occurring phenomenon that cannot be avoided. Punishment-based interventions in ABA have been proven to be effective in reducing problem behaviors to near zero levels, can be more effective and quicker than reinforcement procedures, and is shown to generalize to different settings. The research has also shown that clients prefer treatment packages that include punishment as opposed to those that exclude punishment procedures. And there is support that has shown an increase in learning and academic performance when when behavior is punished. In addition, although punishment is said to produce no alternative appropriate behavior, research has shown that in the case of response interruption redirection, RIRD, and positive practice over correction, an increase in alternative appropriate behaviors along with a reduction in stereotypy has occurred.
Thanks for sharing the points of your argument supporting the use of punishment in ABA. The main points discussed were client preference toward punishment-based interventions, generalization, and efficiency of punishment procedures. The supporting arguments for the use of punishment in ABA will be interesting. Mariah will state the points against the use of punishment in ABA.
When looking at the effects on the client, several studies have found that the side effects are unpredictable. Punishment can elicit an increase in aggression or other undesirable behaviors. In addition to this, punishment can also cause escape or avoidance behaviors toward a specific stimulus, such as a therapist or a type of material. An increase in emotional responses not related to aggression can also be seen as a result of the use of punishment. This can be like increased fits of tantrums or crying behaviors. It has also been found that members of the Association for Behavioral Analysis view punishment procedures as less effective than reinforcement procedures. Several of the views stem from the principles of applied behavioral analysis in that punishment does not teach an appropriate behavior to replace the problem behavior, nor does punishment allow for the opportunity for reinforcement. Additionally, those implementing the punishment procedures are liable for abuse towards the client, as it can lead to the overuse of aversive procedures or dehumanization of the client.
Great, thanks for sharing your point against the use of punishment in ABA. You brought up some interesting points about the side effects of punishment on individuals. Stephanie will now elaborate on the points she discussed in her opening argument about the use of punishment in ABA.
Okay, so punishment naturally occurs and cannot be avoided. This was stated by Timothy Vollmer in his 2002 paper titled Punishment Happens, Some Comments on Lerman and Duran's Review. So punishment happens, and to ignore the application of punishment is similar to like ignoring the benefits and limitations of medical technology such as chemotherapy. Punishment-based interventions in ABA have shown to be effective in reducing problem behaviors to near zero levels. In the study by Hanley, Fisher, and Maglarie in 2005, problem behaviors were shown to reduce to and stay at near zero levels when punishment was added to the treatment package, making the punishment contingencies necessary to reduce the problem behavior to acceptable levels. This is especially important when treating serious life-threatening behaviors. The BACB Ethical Compliance Code 2.09a states that clients have a right to effective treatment. In the case of life-threatening behaviors, punishment procedures would be more effective in reducing the problem behavior quickly so that no harm comes to the client. Lerman and Borndan in 2002 stated that the effects of punishment were superior to those less intrusive procedures like differential reinforcement. The VACB Compliance and Ethical Code also states in 4.02 that clients should be involved in planning and provide consent of behavior change programs. Choose what they want in a treatment package. In the study by Hangley et al. In 2005, clients' preferences of treatment packages was evaluated using a concurrent chain procedure. Results show that the clients chose the treatment package that involved punishment and not the one with reinforcement only, making punishment not only an effective treatment, but a preferred one as well. Along with having a preferred and effective treatment, behavior analysts must account for generalization. In the study by Mackenzie Smith, Simmons, and Soderlund in 2008, they were able to show their punishment intervention for eye-poking behavior successfully generalized to 2 other different settings. Although the research in the area may be lacking, this shows promise. Despite the negative side effects of punishment, there are also positive side effects. An increase in learning and academic performance have been shown when problem behaviors are punished. Rollader, Cummings, and Van Houten's 1991 study tested the effects of punishment on academic performance when the person who directly administered the punishment teaches the client. Results from the study show better academic performance when the punishment was delivered by the person teaching the task than by the person who did not deliver punishment. Inappropriate behaviors declined along with escaped attempts, and more instances of smiling appeared. Calmness occurred when the person delivering the punishment was teaching. Another positive side effect of punishment in the case of stereotypical behavior was the increase of appropriate alternative behavior when using response, interruption, and redirection, or positive practice over correction. In the study done by Herons, Lerman, Kodak, and Keegan in 2011, the use of RIRD, a punishment procedure, resulted in decrease in vocal and motor stereotypy and an increase in appropriate vocalization for 2 out of the 3 participants. Also in the study done by Peterson, Thompson in 2013 shows an decrease in stereotypy when using positive practice over correction. A punishment procedure, and there was also an increase in engagement in highly preferred and low preferred activities practiced in this overcorrection procedure. Chipani also stated in his 2009 book, Punishment on Trial, that in punishing inappropriate behaviors, we shape appropriate alternative behaviors. Extremely cautious of the use of punishment in ABA, we also must not dismiss the many benefits and necessary of punishment in practice. Now I will show you some visuals to prove the efficacy of punishment from these studies. Okay, this graph shows from the study of Hanley and Associates in 2005. Here we have aggression per minute. This aggression decreased when FCT intervention was implemented. Then FCT along with a punishment intervention was implemented, and we can see aggression decreased to almost 0 levels. When punishment was taken out, aggression responses increased. When it was added back in, it went back and decreased to near 0 levels, proving that punishment was effective in this intervention. This is from the Roller and colleagues 1991 article, where we had therapist A or teacher A using punishment techniques and therapist B or teacher B not. Here we have the percentage of correct responses, which was measured, which was used to measure academic performance. Baseline, we see that it is pretty low with both teachers. But when punishment was implemented with therapist A, we see an increase in those correct responses, much more than with therapist B. They withdrew the intervention and went back to baseline, and correct responses went back down. And then they implemented it once again, and we can see another increase. This was the IRID, or this was the positive punishment and overcorrection procedure. Here we see baseline, which is kind of variable. And then when the punishment procedure was put in, engagement went up and stereotypy went down. When it was removed, baseline levels show it reducing it back to the original baseline phase. And then when it was reintroduced, engagement went back up and stereotypy went back down. This one was for the highly preferred activity, and this one was for the low preference activity. So you still see an increase in engagement and a decrease in stereotypy. And lastly, this is the chart for the IRID. Here is our baseline. This is for vocal. These are for this is for motor, and this is for appropriate vocal behavior. So baseline behavior was kind of variable for appropriate responses, but with the IRRD, we see an increasing trend. And then here for vocal and motor stereotypy, we see a decreasing trend once it was the IRID procedure was implemented. Okay.
Stephanie, your points made it clear the positive impacts of punishment in ABA therapy. It is important that you mentioned the ethical issues supported by utilizing punishment in interventions, but only after reinforcement-based interventions are tied first. Raya will now elaborate on her points made in an opening argument against the use of punishment in ABA.
So to begin, the use of punishment in ABA has a very delicate line to balance on before it's being seen as too aversive or detrimental to the client, and then as a result, losing support from those outside the field of ABA, but more specifically, the support of those trained and knowledgeable in the field. It is because of this delicacy in the views of punishment and use, as well as the overall side effects on clients and implementers, that the use of punishment in ABA is not acceptable. Reed and Lovett, in their 2008 article, surveyed 141 participants in the field of ABA who had membership to the Association of Behavioral Analysis, like using the Likert scale, and found that punishment was viewed as a less effective procedure than reinforcement-based procedures for altering a problem behavior. Let me pull up their table from that, so that way you guys can see as well. So in this table, it analyzes the Likert scale results from the views on efficacy of punishment. As you can see, the statement, positive reinforcement is more effective than punishment at changing behavior. And this received a Likert scale rating of 4.2. This means that the participants are in slight agreement with the statement. So what's unique about this survey is that the participants have a knowledge of the field of ABA and the principles that are involved. And as a result, the participants understand that the use of punishment is not always extreme in the terms of an aversive stimulus, but it can involve overcorrection procedures, which are often less extreme. However, given this knowledge on the types of punishment procedures often used in ABA, the participants still agreed that reinforcement-based strategies would be more effective in changing behavior. Additionally, looking at this table, the participants strongly agreed with a Likert rating of 4.0 that punishment has more negative side effects than positive reinforcement. So this statement shows that that many individuals agree that punishment has unpredictable side effects on the client's well-being. Firstly, punishment procedures do not teach an appropriate replacement behavior. This means that problem behavior, which in a behavioral setting would have undergone completion of a functional behavioral analysis to determine the function of the problem behavior, would be punished without an alternative behavior being provided, which elicited the same function as the problem behavior. This can cause an increase in aggressive behavior as well as emotional reactions, which Lerman and Vaudran discussed. Without the teaching of a functionally appropriate behavior, the problem behavior is simply suppressed through the punishment procedure, leading to aggressive and emotional tendencies. Secondly, the use of punishment can lead to escape or avoidance behaviors, as noted by Ringdahl and his colleagues. The occurrence of these new behaviors are often problem behaviors that require behavior change, especially if the child is able to escape or avoid the punishment procedure as a result of reinforcing the new behavior. These behaviors can become stimulus specific in regards towards a specific implementer, treatment room, or material presented. The same works in regards to the effectiveness of punishment procedures. Riesling found that the problem behavior was only modified in the presence of punishment procedure stimulus. This indicates that punishment procedures may not have generalization across other behaviors, settings, or implementers. This alone calls the effectiveness of punishment procedures into question, as the dimensions of ABA outlined by Beowulf and Riesling in 1968 include generalization as a dimension of ABA and a specific behavior change. Now, looking specifically at a study on corporal punishment, research by Kasdan and Benjit, similar results to the implications of punishment procedures outlined previously were produced. Kasdan and Benjit, in their 2003 study, found that children who were spanked had immediate reduction in the problem behavior. This is consistent with the ideas that problem behavior will only be changed in the presence of the punishment procedure stimulus. Additionally, spanking decreased the child's sense of morals as well as overall mental health. Delinquency and antisocial or criminal behaviors also increased as a result of the spanking. These findings align with the emotional reactions resulting from punishment procedures in addition to the occurrence of novel escape or avoidance behaviors. The spanking suppressed the behavior momentarily, but did not implement an alternative appropriate behavior. Those who were spanked were more likely to become abusers or victims of abuse as they matured. Increased aggression is a result of punishment procedures, and that is consistent with the findings of this study over the long term. Abuse from implementers is also a common occurrence in punishment procedures. Lerman and Vaudran also found that some of the side effects could involve the implementer. During the course of the procedure, the implementer could engage in abusive behavior towards the client through the implementation of the punishment-based procedure or through the process of dehumanization towards the client. The potential for abuse is a major cause of concern for those both within and outside the ABA community. It is because of this abuse that the Behavior Analysis Certification Board's Code of Ethics was created. So let me pull up another table, that way you guys can have this to review. So referring to Table 2, which summarizes the views on the ethics of punishment from Reed and Levitt, the members of the Association of Behavioral Analysis as a whole strongly agree that punishment should be used for behaviors that pose a threat to the individual or others. This is consistent with the BACB's Code of Ethics. Although the respondents disagreed with the statements that if approved, a behavior management committee or given consent that is ethically or inappropriately for any behavior. These ABA knowledgeable respondents concurred that punishment procedures are not appropriate for all behaviors or clients, even with proper written consents and approvals in place. The use of punishment procedures is outlined in the BACB's Code of Ethics in Codes 4.08 and 4.09. The BACB's Code of Ethics indicates that reinforcement procedures should be used whenever possible, and punishment procedures should only be used in cases where the behavior is too dangerous or too severe and requires immediate use of punishment procedures. There are many ways in which these codes could be violated during the use of punishment procedures. Code 4.08D indicates that increased levels of training, supervision, and oversight should be available when implementing a punishment procedure. In many home-based therapy programs, these procedures could be implemented without proper oversight by a behavior analyst. Due to this likelihood of violation, as well as the negative side effects and social validity, it is best that punishment procedures be removed from the use in the principles of ABA.
Mentioning the potential for abuse from therapists is important, as this may not be often considered as a potential side effect of the use of punishment. You made it clear the dangers of utilizing punishment-based interventions without appropriate oversight and how this could easily become an ethical concern. At this time, Austin
All right, so your counter arguments to support that appropriate behaviors might be taught during punishment interventions. Rayanne, please proceed with your use of punishment-based interventions in ABA to provide the counterattack.
It was stated that there is better academic performance when a punishment was delivered by the person teaching the task than by the person who did not deliver the punishment. Is the punishment actually generalized? Referring to the article, Some Current Dimensions of Applied Behavioral Analysis. It talks about the 7 dimensions of ABA. One of the 7 is generalization. A behavioral change may be said to have generality if it proves durable over time, if it appears in a wide variety of possible environments, or is spreads to a wide variety of related behaviors. Generalization should not be just for people or places, but also be carried into the future. If the punishment intervention only works if the person who is teaching the task, then it is not generalized. It should be able to work for anyone. According to the article stated above, the more general the application is, the better. Generalization is a very important trait in applied behavioral analysis and shouldn't be overlooked. For a punishment intervention to be beneficial, it should be generalized across settings, people, and maintained in the future. There needs to be more research backing up generalization and punishment. The principles of ABA and the BACB's Code of Ethics requires that punishment be used as the last behavioral modification principle to modify a behavior, or when the behavior is too dangerous to the client or others to continue. However, a key point in this debate has been revolved around the use of punishment shaping and providing alternative appropriate behaviors for the target client. Looking at a few common punishments-based procedures, it can be seen that the behavior is suppressed without providing an appropriate replacement behavior. Firstly, with the use of response interruption and redirection, the individual engaging in stereotype behavior is interrupted and must respond correctly to 3 high probability tasks before returning to the original instruction. The interruption of the stereotype can be led to frustration and increased aggression in this procedure. No appropriate behavior is provided. The client is interrupted from an automatic reinforcer, engaged in high probability task, and then returned to the original task, which has low in reinforcing value to the client. Timeout is another commonly used type of punishment procedure. According to Cooper, Huron, and Heward, timeout is a removal of a reinforcing stimulus in the occurrence of a problem or undesired behavior for a specific period of time. By this definition, a timeout procedure removes a rewarding stimulus which may cause frustration leading to aggression, and the stimulus return to the contingent upon cessation of the problem behavior. The client is not provided an alternative appropriate behavior that would replace the problem behavior. The goal is for the client to understand the contingency and reduce the amount of time spent engaging the problem behavior. It can be noted from these 2 commonly occurring punishment that procedures that the teaching of an appropriate behavior is not included when performing either of these procedures.
Addressing the point of appropriate behaviors being taught more thoroughly is vital in this argument. This has been a main topic discussed by both sides. Stephanie will now summarize and conclude her main points in the argument for the use of punishment in ABA.
The research on punishment being generalizable is still limited. Hopefully there will be future investigation and research into the generalization in regards to punishment. As stated before by the McKenzie, Smith, Simmons, and Soderlund in 2008 article, punishment effects were generalized to other settings. Although there is no backing saying it will generalize to other individuals and with different stimuli, this is a start. Timeout may not directly teach appropriate behavior, but it does assist in shaping the appropriate replacement behavior. RIRD can teach appropriate behaviors. For example, when using vocal RIRD with stereotypy, you block the stereotypy response and redirect it to a more appropriate behavior for that setting. Teaching to say yay or woohoo when excited instead of humming loudly or screaming. This is also the case with motor stereotypy and the use of IRD. You could teach the individual to clap their hands instead of flapping their hands when excited. Lastly, a side effect of punishment is aggression, but this is also a side effect with extinction. Should we then not be using extinction in practice as well? To conclude, punishment happens. It should be used in the practice of ABA because it's effective. It can be more effective than reinforcement alone, can decrease behavior quickly and to near zero levels, can be generalized to different settings, is preferred by the client, and there are possible positive side effects like increased academic performance and learning, and it helps shape and teach appropriate responses. It is ethical and necessary.
Thanks for summarizing your argument. Mariah will now summarize her argument against the use of punishment in ABA.
So, in conclusion, punishment procedures are not viewed by those trained in the field of ABA nor the common person as being effective as reinforcement-based procedures. This is apparent throughout treatment studies and social validity surveys. In a dissertation written by Cornader, it is found that the punishment procedure response interruption redirection as a standalone treatment did not reduce the rates of stereotypy in the target client. This is due to punishment procedures failing to provide alternative appropriate behaviors that serve the same function as the problem behavior. Additionally, failing to provide alternative behaviors and engaging in punishment procedure suppresses the problem behavior, leaving the client frustrated, which may trigger aggression. The use of punishment procedures can cause the client to be subject to abuse by the implementer. This would be in violation of the BACB's Code of Ethics, Code 4.08. As the punishment procedure may not be receiving oversight by a BCBA, nor the implementer receiving proper training on the punishment procedure and when to apply the intervention. The use of punishment procedures as a behavioral principle in ABA are subject to ethical violations, as well as having detrimental effects on the client's well-being. Additionally, the failure to provide alternative appropriate behaviors is concerning, as the problem behavior is likely to continue with increased aggression. The client may become reliant upon the punisher in order for sustained behavior change to occur. This stimulus-specific response does not correlate to the Bear, Wolf, and Riesly article outlining the dimensions of ABA. The goal of punishment as a behavior principle is to decrease the occurrence of a behavior. If this goal is not achieved or sustained, then aversive procedures are applied without results. This is unethical and holds no place in the science of ABA.
Thanks to both sides summarizing their debate. The information shared on both arguments for the use and non-use of punishment in ABA is important to consider and evaluate when deciding which intervention procedures are appropriate for specific individuals. Mariah will now share questions presented by our virtual audience.
We have some questions coming in from our audience streaming this web debate. The first one is from Billy, and he asks, is there any indication that an implementer has any negative side effects as a result of the punishment procedure? Would anyone care to take the lead on this question?
Yes, according to Lerman and Verdra in 2002, research in punishment has declined over the years, which could be due to practitioners and researchers' resistance to the use of punishment in experiments and the ethical concerns. But with updated and stricter ethical standards, researchers can continue to study punishment and make the advances in the field.
Hold on. Wait, hold on. We went too far ahead, so now we're off. But it's okay. We have to redo it anyway. So, Ryan, you want to go? You're on mute. I can't hear you.
Did you not hear my mic the first time when I was talking?
No, it was on mute.
I went to switch it, and I realized, and I heard things in the background. And I was like, did it not switch? And I'm like, I've been talking the whole time, haven't I? Without
All right, we just gotta redo it.
I'm sorry.
I was answering the first question was all.
Well, before somebody flipped to me, they were frozen, and I couldn't tell when they stopped talking.
Yeah,
and so I was like, so I kind of like panicked, and then I went to hit the mic button. I was like, when is she done talking? Because she froze, and then I switched over, and I was like, shit, the mic button didn't get hit.
God damn it.
Okay,
right. Well,
I just
confident in our ability to do this.
Should I stop the recording?
Yes, to stop recording.